Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. I'm Randi Thompson, sitting in for Sam Shad, and we're taping in Carson City at the Nevada Builders Alliance. And today I'll be talking to Azim Jessa, who is the chair of the Nevada REALTORS Legislative Committee, coming up on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
When in Carson City, Nevada Newsmakers records in the conference room of the Nevada Builders Alliance. Coverage of the 2025 legislative session is brought to you by Pro Group Management, Workers' Comp that works for you. NV Energy, proudly serving Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers. The Retail Association of Nevada, looking out for business. And by Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
A power line is more than a power line. It's maintaining the bottom line for small businesses. It's keeping the assembly line moving for our workforce. For our brightest minds, it's meeting a deadline. It's on the front line with our heroes. And on the sidelines of the biggest games. It's a direct line to our loved ones. And it's a lifeline for the most vulnerable. There's a lot on the line.
The trucking industry is the most resilient link in the supply chain, moving 95% of our freight in the Silver State. And while essential, the road isn't always smooth. Supply chain disruptions, rising fuel costs, and unrealistic rules and laws that hamper our ability to serve our customers and country. Our prosperity and every sector of the economy, manufacturing, mining, medicine, and food from farm to table, is tied to trucks. There's nothing without trucking.
Meet Nevada Health Link, Nevada's official health insurance marketplace. Your link to savings, selection, free assistance, and name brand health insurance, where 90% of enrollees lower the cost of their monthly premium. Everyone deserves access to quality health coverage, no matter your income or family size. Visit NevadaHealthLink.com. A few minutes could save you hundreds of dollars per month.
Nevada Health Link. Our plans are made for your plans.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, I'm Randi Thompson, sitting in for Sam Shad. And I'm joined today by Azim Jessa, who's the chair of the Nevada REALTORS Legislative Committee. And we're talking a little bit about the housing market as well as rent control. I know you guys have been very active in that rent control issue. So I have a condo that I've had on the market for like 2 months. I thought, oh, it'll be selling in a couple of days because there's not a lot of product under $300,000. It's still sitting there, nothing. So the market's kind of weird. I guess uncertainty, high mortgage rates. What do we got going on in the market?
Yeah, there's a lot. What market's your condo in, first of all? I didn't...
in Reno.
In Reno,
area.
okay.
Yeah.
So interesting. So what you're seeing is a lot of people are seeing right now. The market is starting to level out a little bit, right? We've had a lot of appreciation over the last, since COVID, essentially, right? And you're starting to see that market's starting to level out. And there's a few reasons for that, right? We're starting to see increased supply. So we have about 3 months of inventory in both Northern Nevada and Southern Nevada. And then we're starting to see some interest rates. Well, we've seen interest rates been pretty volatile for quite some time, and it's making homes a little more unaffordable for most folks, right? So we've had 3% and 4% interest rates for, a long, long time, right? As long as most of us can remember. And now we're starting to see 6s and 7s. In fact, just the other day, we had with the bond downgrading of Moody's, right? Downgrading or the U.S. credit rating or whatever it was exactly. We saw a rate spike over 7 again for a little bit. And, I feel bad for those people that had to lock their loan rate that day. They all of a sudden have a $75 or $100 more payment just because, of bad timing. So there's a lot of things factoring in there, but it's a little volatile right now.
So the mortgage rate isn't necessarily tied to the federal loan rate. It's inflation, it's the bond rate. And people kind of look at that going, why are rates so much higher right now?
Yeah. So the mortgage rates, I don't know if they're officially tied to the 10-year T-bill, but that's how generally they'll track. So if you look at the history of the 10-year note and you look at the mortgage interest rate, they tend to track. They'll follow pretty closely. And it's usually about 1.5% to 2% margin between those two. Right now we're seeing 2.5% to 3% sometimes. So the banks are charging a bit more of a premium. you can maybe ask them what's going on there, but I think there's just, they're building in some risk into that, not knowing exactly what the market's doing. There's a lot of instability in some economic policy right now in the U.S. that we're not used to, and then and that's been going on with the inflation too. It's not just the current administration; those rates were already elevated with the previous administration as well.
I actually am seeing some people selling their homes going, you can assume our mortgage at like 2 or 3%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great way to, if you're really desperate to get rid of your house,
Yeah.
assuming somebody's mortgage is a great way
Yeah,
to do it.
so if you're a veteran and veteran buyers, you have that ability to do that. The VA loans are assumable. So if you can find a VA loan that has a lower rate like that, I know there's a few FHA rates like that too, but it's generally the government-backed rates. But if you're a veteran, ask your realtor about that and your mortgage broker, and that might be a way to get a discounted rate. You still have to pay the difference on the rest of the loan amount, if you will. So if you assume a loan at $300,000, but the home is $500,000, you still have to finance that $200,000 or however you're going to pay that difference. Okay. But you do get, it's certainly getting a discount on a portion of your loan. So a good product for some of those folks who are eligible for that.
That's good. I didn't know veterans could do that.
Yeah.
There you go. There's your tidbit for the day for veterans. So you're up here. You've actually testified on some rent control bills, and there's several of them in there. And the proponents of rent control think this is going to help housing, affordable housing, that if that you're going to lock in rates and you're going to be protected. Yeah. How historically has rent control worked for that issue?
Rent control has not worked in any market that I know of, any market that I've read about or heard about. It generally does more harm than good, right? It'll discourage new development. It traps people in homes that aren't suited to their needs. It really just, and then it'll hurt the government property tax base too with decreased prices and whatnot, right? Or a flattening of prices. And then, it just really just overall decreases the quality of housing, right? So, to give you an example of trapping people. So you have an empty nest family, let's say, right? They're in a 4 or 5 bedroom home as they're raising their kids, right? They're in a rent controlled environment where their rent increases well below market rate. Now, let's say those kids move out, go to college, do the thing, and now they're empty nesters. Well, they're in a 5-bedroom home that they don't need, but they're not willing to move because their rent is below what the market rate would be, right? Well, meanwhile, you have a family relocating to Nevada, right, with a couple of kids. They're here for a new job or, something like that type of situation, right? And or a multi-generational family, for example, right? Like where the parents maybe move back in with the kids. They don't have a home to live in. They're stuck in a 3-bedroom condo or something like that because, these homes are plugged up by folks who are not willing to move because they have below market rent. So, not a good thing. Maintenance of homes, right? That's going to be an issue if there's not enough profit margin. There's not enough revenue to cover some of the expenses that just to maintain a home, right? And you have to fix cabinets, doors, air conditioners, heaters, windows, leaks, all those things happen. I mean, I just had a roof leak in my rental. We got to take care of that. And, that costs more than the couple $100 a month in profit that you're making on a rental. So.
Well, the condo that I mentioned, I've been renting it out for years at below market rate because I'm a veteran.
Your mother-in-law lives in yours too?
Yeah, exactly.
That was me.
No, I actually had a friend who's a veteran who had PTSD and other things, and I didn't even charge him rent for about a year because I didn't want him to be one of those homeless vets.
Yeah.
And I'm not that. That's how I looked at my condo. Is how could I help provide people with an affordable place to live? But if it was capped, I would have very little incentive to make any investments in it, to put in new products, and because I'm not going to make the money I need to cover that. So.
Yeah, and the margins on most mom and pop rentals is not that much, right? Like most folks are relying on the equity over the term that they've owned that home for maybe retirement or to pass on to their kids. But the $200-300 profit before federal taxes, you still have to pay income tax, right? Mm-hmm. It's a small business at the end of the day, right? You still have to pay taxes. You still have to pay increased property taxes, all the things that go up, right? The cost of maintenance right now in this inflationary environment that we're in, all those things are more expensive. So there's just not a lot of room. So I can see what you mean by that.
Yep. We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Your good times are at Tamarack Casino during the $150,000 Denim and Diamonds giveaways with cash and free play drawings every Thursday and Saturday, and $30,000 in grand finale giveaways Saturday, May 31st, including a top prize of $20,000 guaranteed. Your good times are at Tamarack Casino.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Welcome to Story County, where history meets innovation, and a pioneering spirit continues to shape our future. At the heart of the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, we power the future with global leaders in technology and manufacturing, driving progress that reaches far beyond our county lines. From advanced manufacturing to tech innovation, our industries are creating thousands of quality careers, fueling a vibrant economy that benefits every Nevadan. But it's more than just growth. Our community is our foundation, supporting families, empowering local initiatives, and creating a place where everyone belongs. Be part of a legacy built on bold ideas and boundless possibilities. Join us in building a brighter future right here in Story County. Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Back on Nevada Newsmakers with Azim Jessa from the Realtors, head of the Legislative Committee. So in doing some research for this, I found an article by a guy named Del Nordby in the Reno Gazette, and he talked about how he and his wife spent 2 years repurposing a deserted assisted living facility in Sparks into 59 apartments that are essentially workforce housing. And he said, if our rents were to be capped or even lowered below market rates, the project would not be feasible, and we would have not been able to provide these 59 units to a local underserved community. They are quite literally the mom and pop. It's a husband and wife who spent their own money and got some investors and transitioned this place into a really cool, it's called The Hub at Audi.
Oh, that's cool.
And if you think of what happened during COVID, where people were, they couldn't kick out renters, they had to freeze their rents, and you had to come in and fix all these properties. People lost so much during COVID, and now you want to try to control what they're doing. But this is truly the mom and pop.
Yeah, that's a superstar mom and pop, because generally the mom and pop folks that we're talking about own 1 or 2, 3 rentals. I mean, we kind of define it internally as people who own 5 or less units. Okay. And generally it's, you buy a home. In my situation, right? My wife and I bought our first home. We saved up over the years, had a couple kids, and moved up into a home that better suited our needs. And we kept our first home. We're renting out. I joked about my mother-in-law. I did rent it to my mother-in-law. Hopefully she's not watching. I always make fun of her in these things because I lose money on that. But even I do have some different renters in there now. But yeah, so that 69 or 59 homes, I believe you said, like that's a superstar project. But most people are 1 or 2 homes. 40% of all rentals in the U.S. are owned by mom and pop landlords. So, the whole idea that it's all corporate housing, it's all, these folks that don't care about people. Mom and pop landlords during COVID were the ones that probably suffered as much as some of the tenants who, lost their jobs and whatnot. You're right. They weren't able to evict any tenants who couldn't pay their rent. And a lot of them wanted to work with the tenants. They understood, right? We're a community. It's a lot easier to work with a mom and pop landlord than it is to work with a faceless corporation via text or email only. But the cost of that maintenance, you're right, like it comes from those things, right? So if you're not collecting rent and you have to make those maintenance costs, a lot of folks lost their homes. There was a lot of landlords that just sold, and they said, you know what, I can't afford it. I'm burning through my savings to maintain this property. And unfortunately, those then get sold to corporations, which is a conversation for another day about what they're doing to rent costs. But it wasn't easy for them.
Yeah. So we know we need more housing, but when you threaten rent control, isn't that going to discourage investment?
Yeah, absolutely. So Minneapolis-St. Paul, there's a great example of that. So in November of 2021, the city of St. Paul enacted a rent control policy. Almost overnight, the construction stopped. 80% of the permits that were applied for were pulled. Like the developers stopped building in Minneapolis-St. Paul. They went across the river and permits increased by 70% in Minneapolis, like literally overnight. Yeah. So that just shows you that developers will go to places where they're able to charge market rent, earn a return on their investment, and build some homes, right? And have a profit and supply what people need. Austin, Texas, actually is another great example. So we want to talk about lowering rents. Well, Austin, Texas just added 50,000 units since COVID, since the peak of COVID, and their rents have dropped 22%. So the story came across my email the other day, so anyone can just Google that, and it's out there widely. It's amazing. So like it shows you that increased supply will lower rents, and we believe the same thing will happen for housing. If we can get more housing constructed, there will be lower prices.
Well, we're seeing that here in Reno. I don't know about Vegas, but in Reno we had 2,000 apartments come online in the last year.
Yeah.
That is driving prices down.
Right.
There's more inventory.
Yeah.
Let the market work.
Absolutely. That's funny you use that number 2,000. I went to applied analysis was speaking at a realtor meeting in Vegas, and they were talking about the number of new apartments that went online in Vegas from 2021 to 2023, and it was only 2,000.
Oh, wow.
And so people are wondering why rents went up so high during that period. Yeah. Well, again, permits stopped. There was all this, confusion about what the marketplace was doing, what the government was going to do and intervene. And so builders just put everything on hold. And when we have 30,000 people a year moving to Southern Nevada and only 2,000 new doors, in the apartment world opening up, and new construction also stopped at that same time, you wonder, right? It's actually, you don't wonder. It makes complete sense as to why, unfortunately, prices are as high as they are.
Yeah, well, it's not going to help with this, any rent control. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org.
Pro Group Management is the place where companies can find workers' comp solutions that are designed to meet their specific business requirements. As regulations evolve, Pro Group takes a proactive approach to clear the path to make sure your business stays ahead of the curve. Knowing your workers' comp program is optimized, you can focus on other important matters related to your growing business. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
All hail the $200,000 Cash is King giveaways at Carson Valley Inn. Weekly prize drawings including thousands in cash and free play. And 2 big grand prize giveaway events, each with a $15,000 cash winner guaranteed. Only at the Carson Valley
Inn. It happens. And when it does, there's UMC Quick Care.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Back on Nevada Newsmakers with Azim Jessa from the Nevada Realtors. So I found another article, a lot of articles about rent control. There's a lot of people that are concerned.
It's been studied a lot.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to correct you just so my whole entire state doesn't yell at me about this.
Okay.
It's realtors.
Realtors.
Okay, so I just have to get that out there. Otherwise, they're like, why didn't you tell her how to say it?
Realtors.
Realtors.
There's a missing syllable in there somewhere, I swear. So thank you for that. Realtors. Another article I found was from Jim Clark, who lives up in Lake Tahoe, and he expressed the concern that in his research, that communities that have implemented rent control have seen workforce housing, which is his main concern, turn into short-term rentals. And so to avoid the cap, the rent control, they actually say, well, fine, I'm going to make it a short-term rental because it doesn't apply to Airbnbs. So, and he mentioned a study from San Francisco in 2019 that found that stricter rent control was implemented. Landlords removed units from the rental market and converted them into short-term rentals. So could you speak to
I've
that?
actually seen the same thing. So it showed that when stricter rent control measures were put into place, a lot of folks just took their homes out of the rental pool, went into into the short-term rental world, right, where the margins are quite high. You can probably make the same in a month. In a month of traditional rent, you'd make that in maybe 2 weekends in a short-term rental. Well, there's restrictions and limits on that, right? But these folks are just decided that it's worth breaking the law and, you know, putting short-term rentals in and doing that instead of actually, you know, adhering to the rent control policy. So again, not only have you now lost another home in the rental pool, but you've made a lawbreaker out of it, right? This bad policy where these folks were happy with the rent they were able to charge, or regular rent, but then when you start restricting it, they were like, nope, forget it, I'm moving out of that. So in New York City too, right, there's another area, like there's a lot of illegal short-term rentals. I think I read somewhere in like 1970, there was about 1 million rent-controlled apartments in New York, and now it's down to like 22,000 or something. So it just shows you, as you have more and more rent control, people will leave that marketplace and get into just either completely leave it or find some other opportunity to earn money. And then I talked earlier about local government budgets. Like here's another issue with rent control is that as these properties start to devalue, right? Like if they're not maintained, they're, you know, the rent isn't able to be increased, so you have a limited price investors are willing to pay for it. So property values go down, right? Properties are valued at different ways, right? So there's the resale value, there's the construction value, there's the highest and best use type of thing. Well, if it's a rental community, right, they're going to be valued based on how much rent you can charge. And so if the value goes down, you're going to have a loss in property taxes. So actually I brought a few stats of how much some cities have lost in rent, in tax revenue because of rent control. So we just talked about St. Paul, Minnesota. Properties values dropped about 6 or 7% instantly in the city, and they lost $1.6 billion in revenue, in property tax revenue, right? Which would go to police, parks, roads, schools, right? So all the important things that we do need as a community, as a society to keep our neighborhoods healthy. In New York, they're estimating an annual $370 million in property taxes are lost because of lower property values due to rent control. New Jersey, they said it's about $3.2 billion. Montgomery County, Maryland. So again, when rent control was initiated, it was a $46 million deficit in their budget, and now it's a $101 million deficit. So property values, right, have dropped enough that it's cost another $60 million right there. And then they talk about and they actually calculated sales taxes as well, and they're losing over $330 million in sales taxes too. So just some wild numbers, some wild revenue losses because of rent control. So not only is it, you know, hurting property values, hurting homeowners, hurting landlords and tenants like we just talked about, but it's hurting the counties and cities as well.
Well, and every county and city right now in Nevada is in a budget deficit.
Absolutely.
So this is only going to hurt them even more.
Agreed.
That's the whole part of that depreciation. We won't go there yet, but we might go there. And then, well, it's funny. I found another article from John Koppel, who's with the Howard Jarvis Tax Association in California. And, you know, you've gone to testify at the legislature. The thing that legislators hate to hear is, well, in California, we do it this way. And, so you never say that. But, he talks about having been involved in California. He would gladly trade Nevada's economic policies for ours. But he has said that Nevada should reject this policy as California rejected. He goes, this is the one time you actually should listen to California. Yeah. But he talked about how it has hurt them, and Prop 33 was voted down overwhelmingly in California.
Yeah, 60-40 if I remember correctly, right? And that's funny, they say we don't want to do things like California. Well, I'll tell you, last session when I saw some of the rent control bills that came across, they were almost word for word copies of California laws. So let's, what's good for one side is good for the other, I suppose. But so 60% of the California voters rejected Prop 33, which would increase rent control measures across the state. And it was bipartisan, right? So Governor Newsom was against it. The California GOP party obviously was against it. San Diego mayor is a Democrat. His name eludes me now, but he was against it. The San Jose mayor said, this is going to actually work against our affordable housing initiatives to create workforce housing. And you guys all know San Francisco and San Jose are one of the most expensive places, if not the most expensive place in the city to live. So it was bipartisan support against it. Yet, unfortunately, some politicians just want to continue to push for it when it's been shown, right? There's only 6 states in the country that allow rent control and 34 that have strictly banned it. So why would we want to side with, the group that is now arguing against it and doing everything to change it back? Like St. Paul is actively working to undo undo the regulations that they started in 2001.
There you go. It's like we learned from this. Well, economically, it doesn't work out. And I found yet another article from Mark.
You did more research than I did for
no,
this.
That's just, well, you Google rent control and
I'm gonna
you'll find
call
all
you.
these articles.
I'm going to call you next time I need to testify.
You and our economics professor, Mark Pingle, penned a op-ed against it, showing that just the economics are flawed. It's flawed economic thinking. But what I found interesting is that 93% of economists polled are opposed to rent control.
Yeah.
93% of economists don't agree on anything. So this is overwhelmingly economically a stupid thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Like I said, it's bipartisan. One of my favorite podcasts about this, if you ever read the book Freakonomics, well, they have a rent control episode, and they talk about both sides of the argument. They have a quote from that, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, the Swedish economist, and hopefully it's hyperbolic, but maybe it's true.
Assar Lindbeck.
Okay, look at you. Look at you.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right? The best way to ruin a city short of bombing is to add, I'm paraphrasing there, is to enact rent control. So it's not a favorite amongst economists, sorry.
Yep.
And there's stories of black market rent and trading homes and stuff like that in Europe, in like Stockholm, Sweden. Companies of Spotify threatened to leave Stockholm because of the cost of housing, because Stockholm is 100% rent control, and there's a black market for rent. Like, I don't think we'd ever get there, but you never want to say never. If rent control got enacted in that heavy-handedly, you may start to see things like that.
Yeah. Well, let's hope the legislature is smart and doesn't pass it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate your time, and we'll be right back after this.
Each day, the Children's Advocacy Alliance partners with leaders, legislators, and families across Nevada to improve children's health, education, economic well-being, and safety. We recognize Nevada will be no better than the state of its children. Be a part of this change. Be a supporter of the Children's Advocacy Alliance. For more information, go to caanv.org.
Imagine a magical garden that feeds Carson City's hungry and homeless, teaches our high school students agriculture, creates hanging floral displays to beautify downtown, and yet charges nothing. It's not magic. It's the Greenhouse Project. It's real, it's growing, and it needs your help. Go online to carsоncitygreenhouse.org so together we can grow it forward.
For 50 years, Nevada Heating has been keeping people comfortable in their homes. At Nevada Heating, call the Do It Right guys and get the air conditioning back on today. That's the Nevada Heating way. Why sweat for days on end when Nevada Heating can get your air conditioning fixed today? Call us today and we'll fix it today at 323-5585 or schedule us on our website at nevadaheating.com.
Welcome to the Ahern Boutique Hotel, where luxury and warmth come together in the heart of Las Vegas.
We take pride in offering a one-of-a-kind experience for both locals and tourists.
Join us for handcrafted cocktails and an unforgettable experience.
Joel's Chop House, the perfect place to savor views of the Las Vegas Strip.
Satisfy your cravings at the Ahern Chocolate Shop.
No smoking, no resort fees, and the parking is always free. The Ahern Luxury Boutique Hotel is your home away from home.
When in Carson City, Nevada Newsmakers records in the conference room of the Nevada Builders Alliance. Coverage of the 2025 legislative session is brought to you by Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you. NV Energy, proudly serving Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers. The Retail Association of Nevada, looking out for business. And by Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
Thank you for watching and listening. You can catch us anytime at NevadaNewsmakers.com. Thanks.